Welcome to Let's Talk Jets Radio.
So what's up, everybody? And this is a special show. This is a special guest, Matt O'Leary, who I appreciate taking the time for, man, because we don't know each other that well, but you're making time, so I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, man, excited to get on. We've talked a little, well, I met you at opening day, obviously, this year, and then talked a little bit through Twitter. But yeah, I'm excited to come on and talk some Jets with you. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know Matt, which I'm sure everybody does at this point, Matt O'Leary, New York, on YouTube, Matt O'Leary on Twitter. We'll make sure we promote all your stuff. Just Jets podcast. You're a man, and the Islanders too, man. Is there anything you don't do? That's the first question.
Very few things I don't do. I'm working all the time, but I love it. It's something I'm passionate about. So I love spending my time doing content.
So what is, I guess the first question is, what made you a Jets fan?
So my dad, like most people, I feel like it passed down through the family. I remember, so I was born in 95. So like early 2000s when I started really getting into football, and it was a game in 2003 against the Dolphins, and Ricky Williams ran for like 1 billion yards against the Jets. But that's like the first time that I really like remember, being able to sit down and watch the game with my dad and understand what was going on and stuff like that. And, I live not too far from Hofstra where they used to practice. So it's only 10, 15 minutes from my house. So I would go all the time and watch practices and do the Jets Fest and stuff like that. And I've been hooked ever since I was about 8 years old.
And how cool, I mean, I used to go to Hofstra all the time too, man. How cool is that? Because you could watch the two-a-day practices, you can get autographs, the players hung out. It's so much different now. It like, even where they had in Cortland was different. I mean, in Florham Park, it's different now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I've watched a few things in Jersey, like at their facility, and then a couple of times at like the green and white scrimmage, but it's not the same. At Hofstra, you would have everybody up along the fence signing autographs. It didn't matter. Now I feel like they send a couple like undrafted free agents who aren't going to stick on the roster out, sign a couple balls, and that's it. But yeah, I feel like we were spoiled, especially here on Long Island with the Jets practicing there. And, I got to meet a lot of really awesome people, and there haven't been too many times where it's like, oh, that guy was a dick or something like that. Everyone was super nice. And I feel like we were really lucky for that.
Yeah, that was some of the best memories, man. Because in between practices, you can go to like Bogarts or wherever and go get like a lunch. A lot of times Jet players go in there, you walk into a player here, there. It was so much more fan friendly, and you kind of had like, kind of like a friendship with some of the players. It was so much different than it is now, but times have changed. And I guess the next question I have for you is, what made you become a content creator, man? Like it's a wild and wacky world. And what made you want to get involved in it?
So it's a good question. When I was pretty much old enough to realize that I wasn't going to be a professional baseball player, I wanted to work in sports somehow. And I was always a pretty good writer. So initially I wanted to be a journalist, and I went to college for journalism. And I did it for about a year, but I really caught on to the broadcasting program, and I started to do a radio show on the college campus, and it kind of expanded from there into doing video content. But I love it, just connecting with people, meeting new people, and just I don't know, it's almost like nowadays you don't necessarily have to be connected to a television station or a radio station. You can create your own platform, which is something that really excites me. And I don't know, I'm kind of a creative guy. I need like that outlet. It's kind of an outlet for myself as much as it is like putting, content out for other people. So I feel like it goes both ways.
Yeah, it's cool to have a platform where you can like express your opinion, and it's not like the same old media narrative, man. It's like, it's like you can speak from a fan perspective or a different perspective that it's not kind of being force fed down. You know what I mean? It's like a whole unique avenue. I think a lot of fans are exploring. You do a great job with it, man. I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And same with you guys. And I feel like Jet fans are really lucky because we have so many different content guys who are through the fans lens. And like for me, if I want to consume content, that's what I want. I don't necessarily care if like someone who's, follows the team around and gives me a quote at a press conference that I could watch, myself online nowadays. Like I don't know. I just feel like there's more value in trying to be relatable to the fans or just be like an extension of the fan base.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest pet peeves was when somebody says, "Well, Jet fans think this." I'm like, "Well, how do you know that if you're not a Jet fan? Like, you know what I mean? If you're a member of the media that likes the Dolphins or whatever you like, you're not a like legitimate longtime fan. How do you know what we think? If you don't pay for ticket prices, you don't go to games, you don't like, you're not invested with all your time and energy and passion. Don't speak for us." That used to drive me crazy, and that's what kind of got a lot of people saying, "Hey, you know what? We'll speak up for ourselves now. We can share what we think," and that's what makes it the most fun, I think.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's like part of the context is missing with that because they don't live it and breathe it like we do. We've been through and it affects us. Like the huge losses at the end of the day, it's like it's a job for them. They're doing their thing and it's not an easy job. I give them a lot of credit for it, but we like you said, we lived it. We go through it. We pay the ticket prices, the poor people who pay PSLs and all that
Yep.
stuff. It's a different world. So I agree. It's kind of like a more of a lens into what it's like to be a fan.
So we're now into the year two of Coach Saleh, this whole experience. So before we even go into free agency and Joe Douglas and everything else, what are your thoughts on him after his first year?
Yeah, I thought there were some things that I really liked from his first year, and there are some critiques that I have for him, but um the one thing I noticed is he very much so is a player's coach. Guys want to come and play for him. And it seems like he has a really good rapport with his players, which
Yep.
with Adam Gase, we knew that was a disaster from the get-go,
Yeah.
but Todd Bowles before him was a little bit more reserved. So it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to tell the relationship that they had with their guys. And with Salah, I feel like he's open. And even like his answers with the media, I feel like he treats them like one of his equals. So he's like giving them a
Yeah.
legitimate answer. It's not
Yeah.
like, I don't know, a fluff answer that you're just tossing to the media. It's like he's genuinely having
Yep.
conversations about
Yeah, I agree.
football and stuff, which I really respect that a lot. Um, I do think he has to become, and this is going to happen with time. I think he has to be a better game manager.
Yeah.
At times, I thought he was a little too conservative. I would like to see him be a little bit more aggressive, also. But that's kind of you learn with experience. It was his first year
Yeah.
running something as a head coach, so there's going to be a learning curve involved here.
Yeah.
So I'm giving him a little bit of a break on that. But overall, I like the direction that both he and Joe Douglas are taking this team.
Yeah, I think throughout the year, I think we saw improvement in him in a lot of different things, game management, holding players accountable. I think you saw more of his personality as time went on too, where he was kind of conservative. Then you got the fiery, emotional guy everybody wanted to see. Like, I definitely see you saw growth, but now it's like you want to see more growth. You want to see better time management and, handling your players maybe a little differently. And then you go into now free agency, which is this obviously every year is a big year in off season for the Jets, but a lot of pressure on Joe Douglas. Before you go into the moves that were made, what were your expectations of this free agency class just going into it?
Yeah, so with the amount of cap space they had, and even like before even getting into like draft stuff, you knew that they were going to have some pretty big roster turnover. They had desperate holes at the cornerback room, at safety, linebacker, edge, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line. Pretty much
Pretty much the whole
two
team.
thirds. Yeah, pretty much. But usually, like the narrative with Joe Douglas is that he doesn't spend in free agency. So I think people were like tempering their expectations, but I was pretty pleased with the direction that he decided to go in this free agency. I don't really think he overpaid for anyone. I like that you bring in someone like Laken Tomlinson to really help this offensive line out. The goal, I think, has to be make life easier for Zach Wilson.
Yep.
And adding two tight ends in like CJ Uzama and Tyler Conklin, I think is going to help a great deal. I thought for sure they'd add one. I didn't know if they would add two.
Yeah.
And I think they got pretty good value on both. So, going into it, I think, like I said, with the money he had and with the amount of holes that they had, you needed to get some solid starting caliber players in here, which I think he did just that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It was like build around Zach Wilson and plug some serious holes. And the tight end position's been an albatross for years. I mean, we have nobody there. And like you're plugging in Tyler Croft and Ryan Griffin and whoever else, and you knew it wasn't going to work. Now he addressed it. I guess the couple questions I have is, the offensive line, I think, is becoming a strength finally. If number one question is going to be is Mekhi Becton, which fans either love him or hate him, which I don't understand at this point, but what do you think for him? Because honestly, I think he's going to come back motivated with a chip on his shoulder and be like, you know what? I'm going to make my statement now saying, listen, I'm a Pro Bowl level tackle. It was a freak injury, and here I come. But What are your thoughts on Becton as he comes back? And where do you think he's going to play, left or right?
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think he's going to have a big bounce back year for the Jets. He was too talented as a rookie to just completely write off at this point, which I don't get why. There's a portion of the fan base, like you said, that feels that way, and they're completely out on Mekhi, which I just don't understand. I do think they're going to go into training camp and have it be like an open competition for left tackle, but in my belief, I think they like Fant on the left side and are going to end up moving Mekhi to the right, which I don't think is awful. He played that in college and played it at a pretty high level. And the thought of him and Laken Tomlinson next to each other in the run game would be tremendous for Michael Carter or Tevin Coleman, or if they add a running back in the draft. So I think he does end up making the switch to right tackle, which I don't think is necessarily like an indictment on him. I think it's just Fant was so good for this team last year and they really like him a lot, it seems like. But I have high expectations for him. I think, like I said, as a rookie, he was tremendous. He outperformed and blocked some really great edge rushers. And like I said, I'm not ready to throw away the Mekhi Becton stock because his right guard rolled up on him in week 1.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think now he has like Saleh and his staff. They know what they're dealing with. They could work on him. You have another NFL offseason to kind of get conditioning and strength conditioning. I think he'll have some mentors. I think Damian Woody and other guys that said, you know what, they've reached out to him. They have Duke Manyweather. All these guys are going to help him. I think he'll get it together. But the other question I have on the offensive line is McGovern, where, according to who you ask, he either sucks or he's a top 10 center. I kind of want like an anchor where it's like you want a guy in front of Zach Wilson for the next 5 years to be his eyes and ears and just kind of help him grow as a quarterback, call the plays, call the signals, things like that. What is your take on McGovern?
So I feel like I'm in the minority where I'm somewhere in the middle. Like there's a lot of people who are like so pro, like Tyler Linderbaum, like that's who they want. Everyone draft him. Or when there's rumors with Ryan Jensen potentially coming in here. I don't think I would move on from McGovern right now because I think he's an above average center at a relatively good cost. So instead of creating a hole just to create one, I think I would roll with him and AVT on the left side still and Fant back and stuff like that. I'm not ready to move on from McGovern. I don't know if he gets another contract here. So maybe like in the draft, you're looking for a day 2 or day 3 guy that he can maybe, sit behind for the rookie could sit behind for a year or something like that. I think that's completely understandable. But I thought he was too good last year to just, cut to save the $9 million or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that. If they maybe draft somebody and he can be a mentor for them for a year or however they works out. But, it's like you kind of want to start building that line. I think center is going to be one, if not this year, next year they can maybe address. And then you go to, I guess the other spot is wide receiver, which is always interesting with the Jets because there's a lot of names available this offseason that aren't normally available, whether they're through trade or free agency. And if I'm being transparent with you, I'm not criticizing Joe Douglas. I'm not being negative. I'm just saying I'm a little surprised that they didn't make a move other than Berrios, where there's a lot of talent available, no matter how you look at it. Now, they can still do some things, and obviously the draft, you can obviously draft one, but I kind of want another veteran piece to the puzzle. What were your thoughts about the wide receiver moves that weren't made, throughout so far after like a week?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm a little surprised by that too. And just because you see some of the price tags on these guys who are getting traded too, and it's not very high. Like Robert Woods got traded for a 2023 6th-round pick. Like that's crazy. He's a good receiver. He's someone who you could pencil in for 1,000 yards and forget about. And he's under contract for a few more years after this anyway. But to me, it just shows that for their big time guy or the big time addition, I think it's coming in the draft. And I think that I wouldn't wait until the 2nd round, kind of like what they've done the last couple of years with Elijah Moore and Denzel Mims. They got really lucky with Elijah Moore. I think, him being there is a home run, but for everyone who says there's so many guys in this league who are great receivers who weren't drafted in the 1st round, for every one of those, you have a million Darius Stewarts, Chad Hansons, guys like that who just come in and out. Yeah. Devin Smith, just go right down the line. So I think that's something that you have to address with pick 10. So that's based on what we've seen through free agency and just his, I guess, laid back approach right now at the wide receiver position. To me, it screams that they're going to use one of the 1st round picks, probably pick 10 on wide receiver.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then you look at the running back position where we all love Michael Carter. They bring back Tevin Coleman. Do you think they add another piece? There was, like, I was just all about Cordell Patterson. I want him so bad because I just want as many playmakers as possible on offense. I thought he was a nice, diverse chess piece you can use. But do you think they add another running back, a veteran guy, or do they say, you know what, we can draft one in a later round?
Yeah, and on Cordell Patterson, I think that would have been a great fit for this offense. He does a little bit of everything, so
Yep.
that would have been awesome. But where they are now, I think you could probably wait and take someone on day 3 who could be like maybe a bigger body, like short yardage back. Like Hassan Haskins out of Michigan fits that
Yeah.
bill.
Yep.
The Alabama running back, Brian Robinson's a bigger running back. I think he's 6'1". I think they have in both Tevin Coleman and Michael Carter, guys who come out of the backfield, catch the ball, and they're good in this system. They know it. Where they're missing that guy who, like, okay, it's 3rd and 1, we need it 1 yard, so let's give him the
Yep.
ball. We know he's going to get it.
Yep.
So I think you could look and add that on day 3. I don't think you need to, necessarily say we need the top guy in this class at the top of the 2nd round. I think you could probably find someone to fit this role in the 4th or 5th.
Yeah, and that's true. And then you look at the tight end position, which we mentioned earlier, which I think is phenomenal, man. I was so excited about both these guys. And you add them, and obviously you say, okay, these are good pass catchers, but obviously it helps your running game too, man. It also helps your quarterback as a safety valve. It opens up the passing game on the outside. Now, the one thing that a lot of Jet fans are saying is, we don't have a lot of receivers in terms of depth, in terms of legitimate guys. I mean, you have Barrios, you have Jeff Smith and Denzel Mims, whatever else. But like, could having these two legitimate tight ends now open up different options in the offense where you may not have to go 3 or 4 wide all the time or go 5 wide? You can actually feature tight ends instead.
Yeah, I agree with you. Especially from early in the year last year, we saw it. Mike LaFleur was trying to get 2 tight ends on the field,
Yep.
but they had Tyler Croft and Ryan Griffin. Like it just
Yep.
wasn't working, and he had to pivot away from it. And he was running a lot of 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers
Yeah.
on the field because that was more of their strength. But I don't think it was, oh, we don't want to run 2 tight ends. It's we can't because of
Yeah.
just how weak the position is. So
Yep.
they added 2. Both guys are similar in a sense that they're like both good yard after the catch and both have
Yep.
pretty good hands. So to me, that just screams like, hey, let's get these guys going over the middle. Zach gets the ball out of his hands
Yep.
fast, and they turn up the field and go for an extra 5 or 10 yards after
Yep.
with the ball in their hands. Like that just seems perfect to a young quarterback who is still developing in this league.
Yeah, and I think far too often we never take advantage of mismatches. We didn't have the guys to take advantage of them. Like, you have now guys with size that can take advantage of a smaller safety or a slower linebacker or whatever else. A lot of times we're trying to cram things in there. It just didn't make any sense. Or, Wesco couldn't do this or what. It was always like you're trying to force the issue with guys that just couldn't make the plays. And I think now you have a lot more diversity, a lot more flexibility, which is great. And Zach Wilson's in a really good spot. Now it comes down to Wilson, where it's like it was a rocky first year. I think the expectations coming into the season were so high for him because everybody said the next Mahomes, the next this, the next that. Everyone's expecting, rookie of the year and all these, how Jet fans are, man. We're talking, the crazy expectations. It doesn't pan out. Then he gets hurt, but he comes back and he plays very encouraging football. The problem we have now, it's not a problem, but it's like the AFC is loaded. And now everybody's like, you know what? We need to find out what this kid is. Now, for me, it's like I'm not expecting a Pro Bowl year this year from him, but I mean, is it fair to assume that he's got to take a pretty big step after his rookie year? Like, a higher caliber, more consistent play, better command of the offense. I mean, he's got to kind of produce more this year, right?
Totally. And I consider myself a huge Zach Wilson guy. That's the quarterback that I wanted last year.
Yep.
And I agree with you through the final 5 games or whatever it was after he came back. I thought there were a lot of promising signs, but he does have to take a significant step forward in year 2 and get better. And agree, it doesn't have to end in a Pro Bowl season. It doesn't necessarily even have to end with like 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, but you have to look the part of putting up numbers on a consistent basis, which it just wasn't. There was a couple of games where he put up pretty good numbers, but whether it was, the offensive line being bad or just the receivers, being awful, I think Joe Douglas did a good job of taking away some of those excuses, which, was an issue with Sam Darnold. Like in his first 2 years, it was, okay, there's some signs here, but, the offensive line stinks, so they don't have any weapons. And then in year 3, just completely imploded. Well, it looks like at the very least, the roster around Zach is going to be better, which should theoretically help him take that next step forward.
You nailed it, man. That was it. It was like last year, this team had so many built-in excuses and ways to justify losing and poor play that we all accepted it. Well, he doesn't have this, they don't have this, first-time coordinator, first-time head coach, no running game, no receivers, everybody's hurt, all these different things. Okay, well, now, like you said, we addressed a lot of things now. The offensive line should be much improved. They should be able to run the football. You gave them good safety valves and tight ends. You got to assume there's going to be another receiver there to help out. So you're going to have, Elijah Moore hopefully healthy for 17 games. Corey Davis becomes what we think he's supposed to be. So I think, like I said, a lot of excuses are gone now. Now it's up to him to, study film, get better chemistry, command the game, and take the next step. And it's got to be a pretty big step. You're right, because you want to know what you have going into year 3. Like, you want to be like, you know what, we have our quarterback. Now it's just a matter of fine-tuning his skills or just improving a little bit. But all the top quarterbacks, year 2, year 3, you know what I mean? Like, some quarterbacks you could see. We know, we've seen it firsthand ourselves. And the kid's like, you know what? He has some glimmers of talent, but just not enough to be a legitimate game-breaking quarterback, which now in this NFL you have to be. Because look at the AFC. You got to be able to compete with Allen and Mahomes and Herbert and Burrow. Like, that's the only way to keep up in the AFC, or we're screwed.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And that's another reason too why, like, I hear people like the defense stunk last year, but to the people who are like, oh, this draft has to be like all defense. Well, don't you want like to know if your quarterback is the guy or not too? Like, I feel like that's the most important thing. Like, I would rather have like, I don't know, a top 12 offense, let's say, and bottom 5 defense, but at least then okay, we have our guy, we have the pieces here, we just have to improve defensively, which I think is a little bit easier because, I mean, Jeff fans know firsthand how hard it is to find a consistent offense and a quarterback long term.
Yeah, I like you saw, like, what, Justin Herbert's rookie year, they were losing shootouts. Okay, then you lose your shit, but then you're like, we have our guy. So first of all, if you have your guy, you can attract other free agents. People are going to want to play with him. So a high flying offense sells. I mean, that's just good for everybody. And then your coach is supposed to be a defensive guy. Okay, we can get you players to fix the defense, and we can go to that now where it's like last year's defense was probably some of the worst I've seen in a long time, man. That run defense was gross. It was pathetic. It was disgusting. And I like Saleh for a lot of things. I hated the excuses they made for, oh, it's not the scheme, blaming the players. I mean, a lot of times I thought it was effort. It was just bad approach, bad game plans. What is your expectations for this defense now? And they added a couple safeties. They brought Joyner back. They added Whitehead, who I like a lot. They added Reed. But what is your expectation for this defense this year with hopefully a healthy Carl Lawson back?
Yeah, I think that's important to mention too, Carl Lawson coming back, because that was huge, losing him. And Vinny Curry, they were going to rely on a lot too, and he was gone for the entire year. I do think injuries played a big factor. Like, I agree, the defense was atrocious, some of the worst that I've ever seen, but I do think some of it is because of the number of injuries. Whitehead, who they just signed from Tampa Bay, is excellent in the run, coming down and stopping the run. So that's going to be a big help. DJ Reed, who they just signed also, while he's smaller, he's only 5'9", but he's a great tackler and coming up in the run game. So I think that's going to help. And hopefully, in the draft, they're going to have to add more. Linebacker outside of CJ Mosley still scares me. Like, Quincy Williams had some flashes, but I don't know if he's an every down kind of linebacker. And, the defensive line, I think, is pretty good in the interior, but they could probably use some depth there after losing Fadukasi. And, I mean, the ever-elusive pass rusher on the edge. I feel like that's a desperate need for the Jets going into the draft here. So I think it should be improved just based on I don't think you're going to have a repeat year of that many injuries, and they should have more quality bodies in here as well, too.
So what is your evaluation of John Franklin Myers, who, he started off, he had a good year 2 years ago. He started off strong last year. He got the big contract. And then after that, it just didn't seem like his performance was very consistent. Everybody expected the big sack numbers from him and Quinnen, to be honest with you. But what is your evaluation of John Franklin Myers? And do you think the return of Lawson and Myers coming inside will help him a lot, maybe make him more disruptive as a player?
I agree. I do think that. I think him moving inside is going to be better for him. I think he's better suited on the inside than he is on the outside. And I think even though like the sack numbers weren't necessarily there, I still think there were some good plays on film, and he was getting in the backfield and getting his pressures, but they just weren't converting to sacks. And I think with him moving inside to pair with Quinnen, and then hopefully getting some more speed, whether it's, Lawson coming back, and then, hopefully an addition in the draft here as well. That's going to really help their pass rush. And I get some fans, it felt like, okay, he got paid and he disappeared. But I think some of the underlying numbers were still pretty good with him, even though the box score stats didn't necessarily pop off the page.
So then, and the other guy that's kind of like always a target is Quinnen Williams, who has a world of talent and can be so disruptive. But it's like it's weird because Saleh has that rotation where the guys only play like 60% of the game. So it's like they like try to keep everybody healthy and rotate everybody in and out. So Quinnen will make a couple good plays, and then he'll like for 2 quarters you don't really see much, and he comes back and makes another one. It's like what kind of player is he? I think a lot of people want him to be like next Aaron Donald, or the expectations were so high for him. Will he ever reach that level, or what kind of player do you think he's going to grow into?
So he's an interesting one because I feel like he's very polarizing. Some people think like, oh, he's massively overrated, like he's not any good. And then you have the others who are like, he's a top 5 defensive tackle now, which I think he's probably somewhere in the middle. He's definitely an above average interior defensive lineman, probably even top 10. I think he's a very good player who's a little bit inconsistent. And if he gets the consistency down, I think that's when he can go from, above average and, good player to a borderline elite level player. I think Aaron Donald as the expectation, I think is far too much. He's a unicorn. He is completely unique, but being like, I don't know, I feel like Fletcher Cox, that's probably more appropriate comparison where, that's a ceiling that he could reach, and it's just consistency with him. And you would like to see that in year 4 because he'll be probably do an extension after this upcoming year. So he has a huge, season in front of him. I think if he performs well and blows it up, then he's going to get paid. But if not, well, then I think we might have a little bit of an issue here.
Yeah, I completely agree. 1000% agree. This is a money year for him, man. He has got to, especially if Lawson comes back. I mean, some of the excuses for him was like, well, he doesn't have help on the outside. This doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. If all the pieces are in place this year, especially with John Franklin Myers next to him or creating havoc, he should be able to do a lot of really good things, man, and get that contract. So if you look at, the free agency is good going into the draft, obviously two first round picks, the arguments and the mock drafts and all that stuff. I don't want to get too much into that, but to me, it's like, obviously some of your goals come out of this draft as of now with still some free agency left is you got to get a pass rusher. I think obviously, and to me, like you said it earlier, receivers got to be paramount, man. Like at number 10, if they're not going to go at 4, the whole thing today with Drake London at 4 is ridiculous, but I think at number 10, you have to go receiver, man, and pick your player, whoever it is, but it's got to be a guy you pick here. It's to me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And like we said earlier on, like, sure, you have the people who are saying, oh, just wait into day 2. There's a lot of solid depth in this class. You can get someone at 35. I don't want to play that game. I don't want to take that risk because at pick 10, maybe Atlanta at 8 takes a wide receiver. But other than that, you have your pick of the litter. If you want Garrett Wilson, you could take him. If you want Drake London, Traylon Burks, whoever, I don't care which one it is, but just got to find someone who can come in and be productive in this offense right away. And I don't think it's fair to have that expectation for a day 2 player to say, all right, you got to come in here and produce right away.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like we had a show last night, everybody's arguing about, well, if you take a kid at 10, he's got to be your number 1 receiver. And that's not this year. Like if you take a rookie at number 10, it's fine, but he can contribute this year. But you still have Elijah Moore, who could be a breakout star. You still have Corey Davis. It's not like he's the only guy in the field. Like he'll have a year to get acclimated and then become whoever he is. But to me, I don't understand the whole thing is you need a number 1 receiver this year at number 10. I think it's not even realistic at this point.
No, I think everyone kind of like they see Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and think that has to be the norm for these guys who are taken in the first round, which I don't think is really fair. I think if you look at someone like DK Metcalf as a rookie, he put up like, I think it was like high 800s or low 900s in yards and then took that massive step in year 2. I think that's much more likely. But if you took a Garrett Wilson, like his floor, I think in year 1 could be, I don't know, let's throw a number out there, 850 yards, let's say. But then in year 2 and beyond, he's that 1,000-yard receiver every year, and you don't have to worry about him.
Yeah, and while he's getting that 850 yards, you could have Elijah Moore getting 1,000. So that's exactly. Then you have 2 receivers doing a great thing. It's like some of the narratives being talked about, like what has to happen with certain players in the first round, to me, it blows my mind. But the most polarizing player in this entire draft is I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I'm a little bit biased, but it's the safety Hamilton. But I'm not like off the walls crazy about it. I'm not saying him to the Jets, but what are your thoughts on him as a player, and where do you see him going in the first round?
So I would not take him for the Jets just because I think there are too many other needs that need to be addressed at both 4 and 10. He's a phenomenal prospect, and I think he does go in the top 10 somewhere. Honestly, if let's say Aiden Hutchinson goes first overall, I think there's a case for Detroit to take him number 2. They took an
Really?
offensive lineman. Yeah, they took an offensive lineman last year, so I don't think we're going to see them go with Ike Ekwonu or Evan Neal. I don't think they take a corner that early. So I think Hamilton could probably go there. And then after that, maybe one of the Giants picks, or I was getting before the trade, maybe Atlanta at 8, but then you start to
Yeah.
get on a little bit of a run of spots where maybe it doesn't make too much sense. But he's extremely talented. I think he's going to go in the top 10. And
Yeah.
for the Jets discussion, it was never, I don't think this guy is talented or going to be a good player. It's just with other needs and
Yeah.
being able to get other safeties in maybe round 2 with pick 35 or 38, it might be better suited to go that way with the draft.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see him going to the Jets, but I love him as a player, man. He is so versatile. He's a great chess piece
Yep.
for a good defense. Like you put him on the Ravens or something like that. Like there's certain defenses you can see him putting in, and he'll just become like a superstar. Which I'll be happy for him. I like him as a guy. Like some kids are very easy to root for, and to me, he was like one of them. Like I was always a big Jalen Smith fan going back to Notre Dame because like the way he played the game. Unfortunately, his career didn't work out, but it's just interesting how like sometimes like the hatred towards a player is just so weird. It's like we can't have Hamilton. We can't have him. I'm like, well, he's a very talented player. It's just right now he's not a good fit because we have bigger needs, like you said, like receiver, edge rusher, things like that. Just make a lot more sense, But then it's like if he happens to fall, if he's there at say 11 or 12, would you consider trading up for him? Then I'd probably start getting aggressive. Then say, you know what, if he's going to fall till second half of the first round, I would think about it. Thanks, I like him.
Yeah, well, then that's maybe that's a different conversation because then you're not using a top 10 pick to do it. You're packaging, let's say, pick 35 and I don't know, a third round or
Mims.
whatever.
I'll give you Mims too.
Yeah, sure, why not? To go up and get him, sure, okay, yeah, that's completely different. And like that's the thing that I don't like too. When you have these conversations, especially online, it's like it's so black and white. There's no gray area. It's like you can't like a player and then say, well, I don't think he's a fit for the Jets because X, Y, and Z. It's no, you don't want him, so you hate him. Like that.
Yep.
There's no.
It's crazy. Here. Yeah, it's wild. The draft's wild. Like I get like all the mock drafts and the arguments, and everything changes like 75 more times till draft day. So I try to avoid some of it. But we obviously talked about a lot of needs. I think the Jets are going to fill several holes in the draft too. What is the realistic expectation for this team in 2022? Like obviously year 2 of Zach, which we hope he plays better. The coaching staff should be better. What is a fair expectation for Jet fans where we're not like, off the wall, saying, listen, or we should go like 12-5.
That'd be nice. I would love that. But I don't think,
welcome it.
As we talked about earlier, man, the AFC is just insane with the competition. So even a wild card spot with 7 teams is, I think, probably a stretch, but there's no reason that this team can't be competitive and hovering around 500 to the end of the year.
Yep.
7, 8, 9 wins, somewhere in that window, I think is the sweet spot. They have to take a significant step forward. As we've talked about on this show already a few times, the excuses have to go away. I don't want to hear about, injuries or young players anymore. You start having to, put some wins on the table here, and turn some of the draft assets and the cap space capital and get some wins on the board. So I don't want to be going into November, December, hoping they lose. I hope, they're playing meaningful games into December.
Well, I think you're starting to feel a change. Like the culture's starting to change a little bit. They're starting like the whole feeling around the team is changing. Where there's a lot of positive energy. I like all the free agent moves and the guys they brought in. A lot of them are leaders. They're they're football guys. They love the game of football, which the Jets keep preaching. But you can see they're going in the right direction. But I agree with you, man. This can't be a 3 or 4 win season. It can't be. Like it's just you got to get up in that 7-8 win range. You got to see legitimate progress where the defense plays better. Zach knows what he's doing. And you can say, okay, now year 3 of this rebuild, which is probably like year 10 of this rebuild, but year 3, we are becoming a playoff contender, even in a tough AFC. Like the one thing we all make the same excuse, like, listen, the AFC is stacked, which it is, but that doesn't mean we can't compete. Like if it's stacked, we got to get better. You got to find ways to compete with everybody. We were behind because our roster was so bad. Like it was depleted because of McCagden and Gase and everything else. But now you got to get aggressive, fill parts, and take your game to the next level because you can't be a 5-year rebuild for Saleh. It just can't be. Like we have to, with all the resources being allocated between free agency, cap space, and draft resources, it's this year's got to be a big step, and next year you got to be a playoff team.
No, I agree. And I see a lot too with Douglas and Saleh are two guys that I like, and I really hope they're
Yeah.
the answer. It's like they're not even on the hot seat for 4 years. Like that is crazy to me. There is no more 4, 5, 6 year rebuilds. You have to start
Nope.
showing signs of progress now.
Nope.
Like it's been too long of missing the playoffs. How long are we going to kick this can down the road? And I don't want to be
When the cop car coming by.
impatient. Oh, there you go. I don't want to be impatient or have these expectations that are too lofty, but it gets to a point where you have to start winning games. And like you said, the AFC being good can't be an excuse. You have a million draft picks, you have cap space every single year. It's time to start winning football games.
Especially when you see teams around the NFL doing it themselves. I mean, you see it every year. The Bengals or whoever else is like, the turnarounds are quicker nowadays. You know what I mean? So it's like you can't keep saying, "Oh, well, maybe next year, maybe next year." And I think more accountability's got to set in just on an organizational level. So, well, first of all, Matt, thank you very much for joining me. But give out all your information because I know everybody knows you already. So I'm not sure why we're doing this, but tell everybody how they can find you.
Yeah, so Matt O'Leary NY on YouTube and on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. Do the Just Jets podcast. Episodes come out every single Monday. We do voicemail questions and stuff like that. And over on Patreon, at patreon.com, Matt O'Leary NY, we are doing bonus Jets content where we're looking in a deep dive in analytics and mock draft Mondays and all kinds of fun stuff like that.
That's awesome, man. No, definitely. I appreciate your time, Max. I know it's a busy time of year with all this shit going on. So if you'd give me 40 minutes, it's super cool. So thank you, Matt.
Dude, appreciate it as always. And love it. We'll have to do it again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.